On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, the secret to paying off 6 figures of debt. So, welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law. Welcome back, as always, your financial coach, George Corbello. How you doing, George?
I am doing extremely well, but the one thing that I have to say is I'm not a big fan of traffic. Oh my goodness. And again, this is not even New York traffic. This is just Tampa, like small city traffic, and I'm still like, anyway, I'm a little frustrated, but I'm doing well. I'm back to normal again.
Have you ever driven to Orlando from Tampa?
Yeah, I have, and that's miserable as well.
Have you taken that parking lot that they call I-4?
I can't wait till they try to, do a train or do something of that nature. But yes, not a big fan. If you've ever visited Disney, you are aware of what I-4 is, and it is it's a nice parking garage that they have on certain times of the day. Yes.
If you've ever had to get from the west coast of Florida to the east coast of Florida, if you ever had to get from Tampa area to Orlando area, you have to deal with I-4.
I-4 is the only. Apparently, there's no other way of traveling across Florida. But
I guess theoretically, you could go all the way down to Miami and back up.
I could go to Jacksonville.
Or you go all the way to Miami, which may take less time than the direct line of I-4.
Sorry, we a little tangent there, but there you go. I'm doing well, buddy.
So, we actually have a guest on this week's show who's having to sit through all of this nonsense about I-4. So let me take a minute here to introduce our guest, because it's a really interesting story. We're going to hear how much debt she had, how much debt she paid off, and most important on top of all that is how long it took. So our guest is Amanda Sharratt. She understands that helping clients with their financial and investment needs begins with building strong, lasting partnerships. She focuses on listening to her clients. She believes everyone's needs and financial goals for the future are unique. She is a financial advisor for Whitaker-Myers Wealth Management, located in northern and central Ohio. She puts her clients and their needs first. She is also a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. She helps her clients to live their lives debt-free and financially independent. She was also a financial coach. She's got been featured on in coaching seminars. She's got blog articles. She's been featured on news segments all around Cleveland and surrounding areas. She did complete a week-long training in Nashville, Tennessee to earn her designation as a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach.
Nice.
She lives in Seville, Ohio with her husband and daughter. And so welcome to the podcast, Amanda Sharratt. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'll have to say, I live in, as you said, small town in Ohio in the country. And so we do not experience the traffic that you guys are talking about. So
Gotcha.
I remember when I went to school, I grew up in Miami, went to school in Tallahassee, which compared to Miami is a small town. And I remember people complaining. And even when I moved here, even when I moved from Miami to Tampa, to get my first job here in Tampa, people are like, oh, it's a half hour to get from here to, oh my God. I'm thinking Miami is 2 hours from Miami.
Right, exactly.
So I get it. Traffic jam is what, 3 cars on the road for you?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I won't complain so much.
A tractor. That happens around where I live.
There you go. So I want to get a little bit into your story because, we haven't had very many guests like you, and I would love to get more in terms of you got into debt and you got out of debt. Right. So I want you to kind of tell your story of, how much debt are we talking about? Why don't we start with how much debt are we talking about? How did you get into debt? And then we'll talk about what you did to get out of debt and how long it took. So how much debt are we talking about? How did you get into debt in the first place?
Yeah, we had $141,000 of debt, and it ranged. Majority of it was student loan debt, and the majority was my husband's student loan debt. He went to a private out-of-state engineering school, and so it was just very expensive. Excuse me. And so we had debt on our cars. We had debt on, we bought our furniture with financing. I mean, we just were not afraid of debt. We kind of financed everything and just thought, we could pay the payments. And so we woke up, and when we added it all up, we were in $141,000 in debt.
Did that include mortgage debt?
No, no. So we always say that we were paying basically two mortgages, because we had that much debt plus our mortgage.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do you still, out of curiosity, do you still have a mortgage?
Yes, we do. We are actively working on paying off the mortgage. But yes, we do still have a
Right.
mortgage.
Well, and the only reason I ask that is because it's interesting. There are people that will say, I want to be debt free. And what they mean is, I want to be debt free from the unsecured stuff.
Correct.
The credit cards,
Yes.
the student loans, the hospital bills. There are other people that say, I want to be debt free, meaning I want my house to be free and clear.
Right.
I want my cars to be free and clear. I want my credit cards to be paid off at the end of every month. So just trying to get a baseline of what you mean by debt free.
Yeah. For us, it's kind of both. So we kind of took it in stages, and we said that we really wanted to be debt free when it came to, everything. But we said, let's try with the non-mortgage debt first and then go into,
Correct.
paying off the mortgage debt later, and not being as intense while we're trying to pay that off.
So how long ago was this? How long ago was this that you had six figures in debt?
We paid it off in the summer of 2015.
Wow.
Okay. So almost about 10 years ago as we record this. How long
Yeah.
did it take to build it all up?
Well, gradually. It was just a few years by the time we graduated college and got married, and so maybe 5 years. It took us to take on all of that debt, and then it took us 3.5 years to pay it off.
Wow.
Wow, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the thing that caused you and your husband to look at each other and say, we got to get rid of this?
My mother-in-law, she took a class at church, and I think she sat in that class and realized how much student loan debt her son had, and we were newly married, and it created a little bit of fear and panic in her that we were starting our life like that, and just felt like it was normal. So she just came to us and said she would pay for us to go through this class at church, and we didn't want to. We thought, we're making our payments, we're doing fine, but we did it just to make mom happy. And so we went
Smart.
ahead and went through the class. And honestly, this is not our nature, but we were very negative, and like, this is probably going to work for people that make more money than us or
Yeah.
have less debt than us, or we had all of those excuses. And then we just, like I said, it's not our nature, so we were like, what are we doing? Let's just try it. I mean, we your mom paid for this class. We have the tools. Let's just see if it works. And we started paying off. We paid off a credit card really quickly, paid off our cars in 6 months each, and we were just like, this is working.
Right.
So
So then I guess the meat of the question is, how'd you do it?
yeah, well, we started with a budget because we had no idea what we were spending our money on.
Yeah.
And everybody in personal finance will tell you a budget, and a lot of people think that's a bad word, and I'm a spender, so I thought it was a bad word too. I didn't want to do a budget, but I was like, okay, if we're gonna be intentional with our money, we have to do this. And so the first budget was honestly a guess, because I just went to the grocery store and bought stuff. I had no idea what I was spending. So I just started putting some guesses on paper, and then we started tracking it and seeing how close we were. And then once we got the budget pretty dialed in, that's when we started saying, well, where can we cut? What is not necessary right now? Or how low can we go on the grocery budget? And we
Right.
sort of made a game of it and made it fun, and had rewards. Like, if we went under budget in certain categories, then we did go out to eat, or we got a coffee or whatever. And so we made it more of a game than like restrictive, and like, we're on a budget, we can't do anything ever.
So, and this was all. So I know what financial peace is what? How
Sure.
many steps?
So it's the 7 baby steps in regards to that. The class itself is about 9 weeks that usually they have for those, and it goes through each of the baby steps. But also, my question is going to go to Amanda as well. Is kind of like, what habits and behaviors had to change? Because I would imagine it's, everybody thinks it's just the budget, right? Oh, that's all I need is the budget, the numbers to work, and we're good. What had to change for you guys for you to actually have the results, the execution of that set budget that you guys set for yourselves?
I would say the first thing is communication. So we just really just lived our lives, and not that we didn't talk to each other, but specifically about money,
Right.
we just kind of did whatever we wanted to do. We were not intentional about talking about money and how we were going to spend money and agreeing on it first and having all of those discussions, because honestly, it can be uncomfortable. People don't want to talk about money, and you have different views. I'm a spender, he's a saver, and so we
Right.
did not have the same views, and so it was hard. We had to work through some difficult conversations. So that is the first thing I would say, is that it really helped us build our communication skills early in marriage, and I'm grateful for that. But then also just the attention to detail. So I always say that, like, if we in the beginning stages, we would do a budget, and then we would just kind of do whatever we wanted to do. Like, okay, we did the budget, it's great, and then we wouldn't follow it. We would just go over here and do whatever we wanted to do, and it was like, well, that doesn't work. You can't just plan it on paper and
Right.
then do whatever you want, because then you don't have that money to throw at debt. And so what we realized was, okay, now we have to not only sit down and do the budget, but also sit down and track, like, are we matching what we said we were going to do in the budget, and are we making sure that we're throwing that money at debt? And then also making sure that we prioritize those things. So if we said, okay, this is how much we want to throw at debt, or this is how much we want to save, we made sure we did those things first. So then that way life didn't happen and that number got reduced.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times we get into those positions where we have a ton of priorities, right? There's a lot of things we'd like to do with the money each pay period, each month, but it's having that clear. Again, I imagine you had a clear vision of here's what we need to do now, so that we
Yes.
can do more later. So
Yes.
that does help a lot of folks, and I think a lot of people don't do that. It's more just like, well, I need to save for retirement, I got to do the vacation, I got to do all of these kind of things. Oh, and I also need the nice car, and I need these kind of, and you don't have that focus, and it really puts you in that position where it's like you're not doing anything. I feel like you're not doing anything. You're not making any progress in that. So you're getting that focus, getting those priorities set, and actually then going and having the discipline to execute. That made the difference for you guys in that journey, right?
Well,
Yeah.
and I guess one question that I had is kind of from a timeline perspective. Where does your daughter fit in here? Is it we were doing this while she was an infant? Is it we got debt free and then we decided to celebrate by having a baby? Where from a timeline perspective, where does your daughter fit in here?
Yeah, that's really adds some detail to the conversation too. So we did our debt-free scream on the Dave Ramsey show, and I was pregnant with her when we did our debt-free scream. And the really interesting part of that is that we didn't know, obviously, that was going to happen before we started paying off the debt. Was while we were paying off debt, we said, okay, we feel like even though we're not completely out of debt, we feel like we could get started on a family. And it took us 2.5 years to get pregnant. So, we were struggling with infertility throughout that as well. And so, that was really expensive also.
Yeah, right.
Insurance doesn't cover a lot of those things. And so it was just really cool how everything happened, that we were able to pay for all of those expenses and still continue to pay off our debt. And then also, I left my 9 to 5 job and started a financial coaching business when I had her, so that I could have a more flexible schedule. And so all of those things lined up so perfectly that I was able to leave my 9 to 5 and start a business, because that's expensive. But we were able to do that because we didn't have any consumer debt. And so we didn't know any of that was going to happen. But to your point of the why, we just knew freedom.
Right.
If we are able to not have any payments going out other than the mortgage, then that is going to give us more freedom, more choices to do the things that we want to do, because our budget is going to be our money, right? We don't have to make sure we're sending it out every month again, other than to the mortgage. And that is exactly what, time and time again, it has done for us to not have that consumer debt.
Nice. The other I mean, obviously you said new family, you got a new business now as a coach, as a financial coach as well, and then obviously now you're in SmartVestor Pro and doing that. How are all those things working together in regards to that, from that foundation of getting out of debt to what you do today for the clients? What do you think are some of the lessons that you've taken and obviously looking to instill with the clients you work with?
Yeah, the whole reason why I got into financial coaching and now a financial advisor was from this personal experience. So we started leading those classes at our church, and people would stay after and ask us questions like, well, what about this with my
Mm-hmm.
specific situation? And I just didn't feel called or qualified to answer that question. And so more and more I just had a desire to help people because, as you guys know, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck
Yeah.
and are buried in debt and are not saving enough for retirement. And so I was like, there is a way to do this, and you don't have to be so stressed about money. So I really wanted to help people with that, and I felt God calling me to that. So I think that even, from being a coach, from doing this personally, and then now even as a financial advisor, I always call myself like a coach advisor, right? Like I'm able to help you with the lifestyle side as well.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully most advisors do, but I can give you personal examples of what we did or how we do things or even just how we save up and pay cash for things. And I'm very open about that because that is the quote unquote hard part of living debt free is, well, now how do you pay cash for everything?
Right.
Because you got to make sure you're planning ahead. So I really think that the personal experience helps me to relate with clients and just tell them like, here's how I do it. Here's how I'd recommend to do this for you guys as well.
Because if you pay cash, it's free.
Yeah, well, okay, don't go. This guy with the TikToks, I gotta get him out of TikTok world here. This guy, but
George started me on a
on a journey down TikTok lane, and it's
I don't know if we made fun of it a while back. If you've heard of girl math before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you pay cash for something, it's free.
Then it's free. Yeah, you're not paying for it. Yeah,
little,
which is crazy.
Little things like that. But again, I like how you kind of touched on a point too. You obviously have a great message that obviously your business model, what you're looking to do and help the clients, but you're still fighting a lot of societal norms where it's like debt is good, and TikTok tells you like you have to leverage debt to be able to be successful. And also we're in this society where it's a lot of digital. There's cash is not it is still you. Don't get me wrong, it's still used, but we're going into that society where it is changing. How do you kind of work within the the noise that a lot of our clients itself are really working through? What are some of the things that you're looking to do? What's your message when it comes to some of that extra stuff that's out there?
Yeah, the number one thing that I tell people when they say things like that, like, oh, there's good debt and bad debt, is I just talk about the risk of again, that where we come from it is there is freedom when you have less payments and you can make more choices. I always think about that scene in Financial Peace University when Dave says, like, if your boss is a jerk, you can just go because you don't have any payments, right? And you can't do that if you're leveraged in debt. And so it really does give you that freedom. And there's the risk side of having debt of like, what if you lose your job? And then now you can't make all of the payments. And I don't want to go negative and scare people, but the reality is there are rainy days that happen. And so that's the side I talk to people about. And then you're right. I mean, people have a hard time using cash. If they're really in debt and trying to claw out, I do think that there's still value in actually having cash and going to the grocery store because that is the only money you can spend. And that's really what worked for me. But the reality is, I mean, your debit card is just as close to cash. So if you can be diligent with that, but really today, what I think exactly what you're saying is that there are things that it's so hard to make sure that you're staying on track because you can have 17 subscriptions all for basically the same thing and you're not even using them, like whether it's, ebooks or your streaming services or all of those things. And so it's really, I think even more so now, or Amazon, you could just buy things really quickly. So it's really more now just about being diligent and making sure that you're just giving it a second before you click buy now. Because there's so many times where I'm like, I want to do that. And if I just like remind myself like to pause, then I probably didn't need it. And if I do, then okay, I'll probably still want it tomorrow after I give myself a second.
Well, let me take a second because I probably should have done this when I introduced you. So let me take a second and let the listeners know if they do want to connect with you or find you. It's Whitaker-Wealth.com. So WHITAKER wealth.com. Or they can email you Sharratt at whitakerwealth.com. So ASHARRATT, 2 R's, 2 T's. ASHARRATT at whitakerwealth.com. Any social media channels or anything like that people can find you?
We have them for the firm, so they're all under Whitaker-Myers
Got it.
Wealth Managers.
Okay. So again, that's the website, whitakerwealth.com, and A. Sharratt at whitakerwealth.com. One of the other questions that I had, so I know a little bit about Dave Ramsey. Obviously, you can't be in this space and not know something about Dave Ramsey.
You're gonna stumble on at least one video.
Yeah,
at least one.
At least one TikTok.
At least
him and Grant Cardone. So what is the difference, or what is the relationship between a SmartVestor Pro, Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach? You mentioned you were teaching. I assume that's Financial Peace University. What is the relationship between all of those things?
Yeah. So the teaching Financial Peace University, that's a volunteer. So it's just, people pay for the class, but if you're leading it, usually at a church or something, that's a volunteer thing. You're volunteering your time to lead that. The Ramsey Solutions coach is, when I took the course, you had to go to Nashville to their offices and take the coach training. And so you just get trained from their team on how to be a coach, all the different aspects of coaching. And then you can go off and have your own business, which is what I did. And then the financial advisor side and the SmartVestor Pro, that is where if you are a SmartVestor Pro and people are looking for a financial advisor in their area, they go on the Ramsey Solutions website, type in their zip code, and they are delivered 4 or 5 financial advisors that they can then interview. And so those are all SmartVestor Pros that they can, the client can then interview and decide who they want to work with.
But again, as a SmartVestor, there's a certain thing that you do, right? That the way because you had mentioned, it's kind of like you're the financial advisor that can do the lifestyle, that can go a little deeper. And I think I'm assuming that's what makes you stand out from some of the competitors as well, in regards to, like, it's not just the numbers that you're worried about. You're making sure that you're also concerned about the person, the discipline, the things that they do to actually be able to go and do the building of wealth that's important in that step too.
Yes, 100%. I mean, we talk about one of our core values here at Whitaker-Myers is having the heart of a teacher. And what that means to me specifically is to really just in a client meeting, what I tell them a lot is, I don't want you to ever just say, I don't know where my money is or what I'm doing with it. Amanda just told me to do something. Like, I want them to understand it. And, understanding that this is not what they do all day long. So they might not understand it to the level that I do, but I want them to be able to be comfortable to repeat it to their spouse or their friends or something, that what they're doing with their money or the decisions they've made, because I think that's really important. You need to make sure that you feel confident in the decisions that you're making with your finances. And, that's really, I think, where people get hung up, is they are afraid to ask questions. They don't understand finances. And so they feel like, I'm going to go meet with a professional and they're going to use these $12 words and I have no idea what they're saying and I don't want to look dumb. And so we just take it from the approach of, we're going to not assume that you know any of this, and we'll just explain it. And if you do know something, stop us. That's fine. That's great. And we'll move on. But we want to make sure that we're starting from the foundation that you understand all of the different concepts that we're talking about.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember when I got my job here in Clearwater, and the firm I worked for set us up with their financial advisor company to set up, the company retirement account, the 401k, whatever it was, the IRA, whatever it was. And I remember sitting in there, and here I am, an accounting major, so I've got some financial background. I'm not a total slouch, but like you said, Amanda, I'm a big believer in, you do what you do, I do what I do. I may understand it, but you do what you do, I do what I do. George does whatever. So
I do whatever. I appreciate you.
He does what he does.
I know what he meant, but I just want to bust. Go ahead,
there
buddy.
You go. So I'm sitting in this first meeting with the financial advisor, and he goes, well, here, take a look at this. And he hands me this piece of paper, and it's got all kinds of, it's got pie charts on it, it's got bar graphs on it, it's got cool colors on it.
Pretty.
It's very, very pretty.
Okay.
And I said, well, this is great, but what does any of this mean? And he goes, well, just study it, and we'll meet again in a couple of weeks, and if you have questions. I said, okay, so I take it home. I can't make heads or tails of it. I meet with him a couple weeks later. Hey, I can't make heads or tails of any of this. What does it mean? And he goes, well, just, here's another, hands me another one. Here's some more, different colors. And I never, I mean, I think I invested the max that I could invest because there was employer matching and you don't want to give up the free money. But I never talked to that guy after that because, it's not that I wanted to learn enough to be a financial advisor, but I wanted to know more than what do the colors mean on the page.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Help me understand what you're trying to represent here and help me understand the decisions I'm making or where my money is going. Yes, I totally understand. And that's where I take it of the approach of here's what I would want to know, right? When I walk into a meeting. And so I'm going to help you understand all of those things.
So important. I mean, for me, that's the big thing is we want to be in a position where we teach people. And again, it's all about knowledge. It's all about information. What do you need to be able to make solid decisions? Be intentional with the money that you make and what you're spending it on. So I think that's the important part. Unfortunately, we still have people out there, right, that are still, kind of like, here, you figure it out kind of thing. It's like it's easier for that because, again, they keep you as a client, in that sense. It's like, well, you have to rely on me. Right. And it's not that, I would imagine Amanda is there to help you. It's not that she doesn't want to get rid of you as a client eventually. It's just that she's made the connection. She's, the trust relationship itself that says, wow, not only am I learning, but now I'm also helping me in each stages of the life. We talked about, the stages in life in previous episodes. Amanda can be in that position to be able to help. Life is going to change. She's always there at every step.
And so speaking of, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about, Amanda, was, I tend to find that our numbers, our listener numbers are lower. And so we've actually kind of shied away from interviewing people that are financial advisors that want to come on the show and talk about, here's how you invest. Here's how you can get rich. Here's how you can invest a lot of money. And so I don't necessarily want to go down that road, but the question I have is, at what point in this debt-free journey did you all start to say, hey, maybe we can start to put some money away towards retirement? When did you make that decision? Again, from kind of a chronological perspective, when did you say, yeah, let's start putting some money aside to plan for the future?
Right.
Yeah, so we were already saving into our 401ks to get that employer match that you're talking about when we started our debt-free journey. And my husband, as I mentioned, is an engineer. He's a numbers guy. And the plan says stop investing while you're paying off debt. So all of your money can go towards debt. And what I always tell people is that is not if it's going to take you 10 years to pay off debt, right? That is like working the plan and getting it paid off as soon as possible. You're throwing every dollar at it. But my husband didn't want to. He was just like, I just cannot stand the fact of unplugging from our retirement savings and not getting that free money, that match. And so I was like, okay. So we just kept going. And then I don't know what it was, maybe a year in, he kept listening to the Ramsey show and hearing him recommend that. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And we stopped our contributions, which meant we were not getting the employer match. What that meant for us, and what I tell clients that are concerned about that, is you're concerned about it. So if you do unplug, you're going to be even more intentional in getting that debt paid off very fast. And that was true for us. Like, I mean, my husband said, like, we turned the thermostat down, we turned all the lights off when we were not in the room. Like, we were just very intentional on every penny because it was like we understood the math side of unplugging from retirement during that time. And we wanted to make sure that we were then paying off that debt to then get plugged in again really quickly. So what we did was, a little bit of both there. But then when we made that switch, we stopped saving for retirement at all, paid off the debt. Then we built up our fully funded emergency fund really quickly. And then we just jumped right into 15% of our income going towards retirement. So that worked for us really well. And what we see is it works for a lot of people. Again, the key is if you're committed to being intense, right? You can't unplug from retirement again for like 10 years and just mosey out of debt. That doesn't work, and that would scare me.
Right.
Right.
No, and I think that's the case as well. Is you both had focus, there was purpose, there was a why. Once you have that mix, the hard part with a lot of people in the beginning is the intensity. How fast can I go? How fast do we want to do this? Some people can pick it up and go, but most couples are in that one is ready, the other one's not. So it's really more of, when you're both ready to actually take the journey serious and be able to do it, then it's all game on. Like gamify it and just go and do it. So that seems to be the biggest difference as well. But you can't drag your partner. Kicking and screaming is not. You're not going to be able to go that fast.
Although there is what's to say? If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
I would agree with that. That's for sure.
Yeah. But I do think that there is, because you're right, there's a lot of times where one spouse is ready, the other isn't. And so it's like, where can you make those compromises?
Right.
Like for us, it was saving into the employer match is not going to make or break this. Let's just keep moving forward. And then he eventually got on board with that. And
Right.
I think that could apply for many different things throughout the debt-free journey. And I do think that it is just about like making sure that you are talking about the reason why you're doing this, and making sure that you are on the same overall path, right? And that will help you get there.
Cool. Well, as we kind of get towards the end of the episode, is there anything we didn't talk about? Anything you want to add?
I think the one thing I would talk about is, we did not have kids while we were paying off debt. We talked about that a little bit. And so that does create a little bit of an issue with families that do have kids. And they talk about that. Like, I have kids. How do I make sure I do this? And what I would say is, making sure you bring them along with you age appropriately. So I've seen families that have teenagers that they're like, this is going to be so hard. But when they start using the language and talking about like, it's not in the budget, or we're going to have to save up for that, then they're so surprised when they hear their kids saying that, or asking, can this be in the budget, or is this in the budget? And so they really do pick up on that. And then the other thing I would say is like kids sports and just overall things for the kids can get really expensive and creep up on you. So just make sure that you consistently have a line item in your budget with your kid's name next to it. That's what we do, is we just put her name in there, we put a dollar amount, and whether we spend it or not, we just save it for the next month if we didn't spend all of it, because you're going to at some point, especially with sports or when they need new clothes or that sort of thing, because it does creep up.
I just put out, I think, $2,000 on all the various. So it's very different. When I was growing up, we went to one summer camp the entire summer, and that was it.
All right, old guy.
Now it's these 1 week summer camps. So one kid's doing a 1 week Rockatar summer camp. One kid's doing one. I have two boys, and so one of them's doing a week at Busch Gardens, has a summer camp.
Nice.
They're doing both boys together are doing a week at Sur La Table, which is basically a cooking camp.
Okay.
And so it's and we're going to Bradenton this weekend, down kind of near where George lives, for a soccer tournament this weekend. So yeah, I definitely understand. Although, it was interesting. So here's kind of an off topic question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So we've talked before on the show. I got both my kids green light cards. So they have their allowance goes into this account. There's a debit card tied to the account. They can use it. And some of it goes into spending, and some of it goes into savings, and some of it goes into a giving account. And so I noticed my younger son had a couple of transactions on his green light card. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "What'd you buy?" And he said, "Well, I went to the vending machine." I'm like, "Dude, there's like $7. What? How much I give you? I give him lunch every day. I know I pack him lunch every day." I said, "What did you?" And he said, "Well, I bought whatever. I bought a soda for me, and I bought a candy bar for me." I said, "Okay." And he said, "And I bought a soda and a candy bar for my friend." And on the one hand, I wanted to be like, "Why are you buying stuff for your friends?" And on the other hand, I wanted to be like, "That's awesome that you care."
He's giving
to buy stuff.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's using his money to give something to someone else.
And so I didn't quite know. So I ended up defaulting to good job being nice, good job being a good friend.
Yeah.
That's where I defaulted. But my instinct was like, your friends can buy their own candy.
Again, there's a fine line, my friend, in regards to, again, as long as they're not taking advantage of his kindness. I think that, but there's a good lesson there in the sense of, he's using his money that he's earned and he's gotten from an allowance to be able to give back to someone else.
And I did
So
say,
that's nice.
do your friends ever buy you stuff? And he said, yeah, they do. And I said,
there you
okay,
go.
well, then you're returning the favor.
There you go.
That's good.
Yeah.
I did remind them, though, we've got a trip. We've got a Battle I-4 in July. We got a trip to Disney planned in July. And I reminded him, the more snacks you buy today, the less you're going to be able to buy for yourself at Disney.
Plan for the future.
Yeah.
Not when he's 65, just when he's going on I-4. That's it.
That's right.
Because you don't go 65 on I-4. So anyway, well, thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you being a guest on the show this week.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, and again, if you want to contact Amanda, it's whitakerwealth.com or Sharratt@whitakerwealth.com. I'll put both of those in the notes so that you can contact her. I do want to talk real quick about our friend, our sponsor, Sam Cohen with Attorneys First Insurance. Those of you that have been listening for at least 1 week or more will know that Sam is our friend. He's our supporter. He writes errors and omissions insurance for attorneys and title companies all over the country. So if you are an attorney or are a title company and you need to look into malpractice, contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com. Also, the Crushing Debt Patreon account, patreon.com/crushingdebt if you want to support us. And then the Purple Stride Walk that we've got coming up here at the end of April, and my team, My Legacy Striders, which, by the way, we are, at least as of this recording, we are the #1 fundraising team in the country, and I am the number 3. I just lost my spot by like $50. I am the number 3 individual fundraiser in the country. So proud of those two things. Proud to raise money for pancreatic cancer. So. Or pancreatic cancer research,
yes.
Education, prevention, cure, all that stuff. So, with that, anything else?
No,
George?
I'd say thank you. It's, again, always good to learn. All the journey is not easy. That's the one thing I learned at this part of this call itself. Patience is needed, but persistence as well. So, but thank you, Amanda, really.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you being a guest this week.
Thank you.
So I think that'll do it for this week's episode. Definitely, Amanda, I'm sure Amanda has more money at the end of the month than month at the end of the money. And so with that, we will say thank you for listening, and we will talk to you on next week's episode of the podcast.